Welcome to episode 24 of the Service Course Report podcast. My name is Ed Philbrick. I'm joined by Kurt Stockton, and Darren may join us down the road throughout the hour, or we might not get him today. We'll see. So we're recording on April 3rd, 2026, and you can listen to us on Apple. Soon they'll have video as well. We're on YouTube and Spotify with audio and video. Find us on Substack. We'll be at Sea Otter. We're looking forward to that. We're making our plans, and we're looking forward to running into you at Sea Otter.
Yeah, the otter should be interesting. I'm really looking forward to camping with you and DS, since I've never actually camped at Sea Otter, and I was been thinking about this the last couple of weeks. I don't know that I've ever actually, in this century, in the 2000s, I don't think I've ever gone to Sea Otter and not been like working, either running a race team or working with a brand. So it's going to be fun just to hang out, camp with you guys, and we'll cover the Lifetime Grand Prix and check it out, and just roll through the expo and go ride bikes, and probably barbecue some steaks. It'll be good. That's gonna be fun.
It's such a picturesque setting. The fog comes and goes, and the free hubs whiz through your ears. Like everyone's just riding all around your campsite. It's quite the amazing setting, and I look forward to it. And I'm glad that you won't be working and getting expo legs.
Yeah, me too. Well, and that the site that DS has, the campsite, is pretty phenomenal. It's up there, kind of on the ridge, so we're up and we have that view of kind of looking southwest toward Monterey, but out toward Laurales Grade, and that it's pretty spectacular. I mean, I've been to your guys' site before. But it's cool that we're not down in the hole, and we're not camping on pavement down in the paddock. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't think you could entice me to camp down on that asphalt. I rolled through there on my bike, and I was like, whoa, people are like maybe with the big RV or something. I don't know, but that doesn't look very appealing to me.
Well, yeah, I think that's a good point, right? If you have a big RV, like you could be in a Walmart parking lot and you're inside your RV, it's all right. But right, we'll spend most of our time outside, I hope,
Yeah.
hanging out in that. Well, good.
Last time I was there, I walked to the east with my daughter, and we were like walking out in the grass field and the flowers, and we just sat down and we were hanging out, chatting, and all of a sudden this photographer's like crunched over, and he's like taking a picture, and it's Roach Jr., whatever his name is. I'm not remembering his first name, of Stephen Roach's son.
Nicholas Roche?
Nicholas Roach is riding a bike, probably for Giant. I can't remember who his bike sponsor was last year, but anyway. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, like, here we are sitting there, and Grand Tour riders are modeling over on to our right.
Yeah. Hey, it's like people are constantly reinventing themselves, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll be reinventing ourselves at Sea Otter coming up quick. Yeah. I look forward to not hurting my back and being able to step in and out of the outhouse without screeching pain.
That's always a bonus.
That's my plan. Last year, I got a side-by-side ride out too far to the single track for the Lifetime Grand Prix. I had a great, front row view of coming up the single track climb, but I had to walk all the way back, and the 6 miles set my back off, and I was not the same for a couple months. But
yeah, but the new Ed is coming to Sea Otter this year, right?
Hopefully,
healthier. Yeah, more smiles and less back pain. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
So as a way to get to know each other, we were thinking, right now the social media trend is, Dad, what were you like in the 1990s? So I thought, well, what was I like in the 1990s? I quit racing in 1993. I sold all my bikes and bought all my surfboards. And I moved to San Diego to go to San Diego State and study marketing. Tried to figure out how to play beach volleyball. Never really figured that out. You cannot grow up with no gravity in your life and suddenly need to jump and have gravity. I guess I played basketball as a young person, but Suddenly my body couldn't tolerate the jumping when you grew up on a bicycle. So that was what I was like in 1993, 94. I moved to San Diego and didn't own a bicycle for quite a while. How about you, KS? What do you think about in the 90s?
Well, and when we were talking about this, I was thinking of a memory from the 90s. So in 1991, um, after racing what was still, I don't know, it wasn't Core States back then. It might have still been Core States back then, that what's now the Philadelphia Cycling Classic, which was our U.S. Professional National Championships. I think it was I don't think it was Sunday night. I think it was Monday morning. I jumped on a plane and flew over to Brussels and drove to Luxembourg to race the Tour in Luxembourg with the Varta team. Varta Batteries sponsored the only professional team out of Austria, and I got a ride on that team through a connection through Phil Anderson, who DS talked about when DS was a stagiaire on TVM, and Phil was friends with a guy named Gerhard Schoenbacher, and Shoney is an interesting character. He actually raced the Tour de France, and his claim to fame in the Tour was, I think he raced it once and he finished as the Lanterne Rouge in Paris. He also held the world speed record for being on downhill skis strapped to a roof rack of a car, right? So he went into his tuck on skis and set this speed record. Anyway, this guy, Shuni, I got connected with this team, and there was a Belgian guy, Alain de Roux, I believe was his name, that ran, basically kind of was the director and ran the team. There were a bunch of Belgians and Czech riders on this team, and they raced in Philly, and then I jumped on a plane and went back with them, and we flew to Luxembourg. And Tour Luxembourg started, I think if we flew Monday, we got there probably Tuesday morning and started racing like a day later. Did that, and then that Sunday night, I jumped in a car with a couple of the Czech riders on that team. One guy named Milan Jurko, who he was of Peace Race fame. He was this massive dude. But like all of that aside, I just remember it was like, we're going to Switzerland. Well, yeah, we're not flying, we're driving. So we just jumped in a car, and this was still in the days of paper maps, and we just started driving through these back roads. And me, the young American kid going over there. I mean, 91, I was probably 24, 25. I trusted these guys, and we just started driving and got lost, and we weren't on the highway, and they're like, oh, we can save money by not going on the highway because you don't have to pay the tolls. And yeah, that was my first week in Europe, and we got lost. Eventually we made it there, but yeah, one of the adventures of the 90s. What were you doing, Dad? I was driving across Europe with a couple guys that barely spoke English, getting lost, thinking I was going to be a pro bike racer for the rest of my life.
Well, if I do recall, you were on the way to the Tour of Switzerland, right? I mean, which is a
Yes.
pretty monumental race to start.
Yeah. And I did. I started. I mean, I made it through part of the way, but that was a race I didn't finish. That the Tour de Suisse was interesting. They had all these different classifications. I mean, you get into a race, right? You've got the race leader, mountains classification, points classification. Sometimes there's a sprint classification that's different than the points. Interesting thing about the Tour de Suisse is they had this gold prime classification. So there were these intermediate sprints, and the winner of this overall classification at the end of the Tour de Suisse, if I remember correctly, won like a kilo of gold. And maybe, a kilo's a lot. I mean, maybe it wasn't a kilo. You won like some gold bullion. And so we started this first race, a couple 100 kilometers, and like, you roll out neutral, and they drop the flag, and instantly we're going like 55 Ks an hour, like 200 kilometers at, meter one. We're like going, it's strung out. And I was just like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? And it's just strung out and it's going, and then in hindsight, you're like, oh, okay. Well, EPO had been introduced to the peloton a couple years earlier, and most everyone was pretty well juiced. And probably stories for another podcast was, as I wasn't recovering and I was struggling, oh, well, did you talk to the soigneur? You can get this and get that. I was like, well, maybe if I can't do this without a little pharmaceutical help, I should be doing something else. But yeah, that was interesting. I mean, I do remember one stage when I just Tour de Suisse, I just made the time cut, stage 3, stage 4. And this is me going in that box that I have over here that has all my old training logs. I could tell you exactly when it was. But I was off the back with a rider from PDM. And I don't recall his name right now. But the team car came back for him. And I was like, all I got to do is stay with this guy and we'll get back. And, the team car was motor pacing us to make the time cut. It was a sprinter guy that I was riding with. And we just barely made it to the finish. Like, I think within less than a minute of making the time cut, we made it. And as I was told, this is the Tour of Switzerland. So the Swiss, they don't, if you're 1 second late, then you're out type of thing. So we got done and I'm just blasted. I'd been off the back chasing, and then I got the note that I had been selected for medical control. And I think I was halfway back to the hotel and they had to take me in the car and we had to go do medical, and it had been raining and this and that. So by the time I got back to the hotel, and I was like, oh man, I'm beat. All this travel, raced Philly, did, Luxembourg. I'm out of my element. I always struggled with that travel. I went to go get my massage, and the soigneur said, oh no, you're not on the massage list tonight. So at the end of that whole day, I was like, wait a minute. Like, isn't that what you guys do? It's like, oh no, you don't get a massage tonight. So to finish that all off, I went to bed in some beautiful Swiss village, looking out at the Alps, without a massage, barely making the time cut. And I maybe made it a couple more days before that was it. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty wild. I mean, it was racing, that 1991 Tour de Suisse. I'm pretty sure Olaf Ludwig was in there, of the of the East German juggernaut, and he raced for Panasonic. But all those teams, yeah, it was quite an eye-opening experience. Having grown up on a diet of racing domestically. We cut our teeth racing in California, where we did have a lot more road racing back then. And going over there, did what I could do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good story. Thank you for sharing it. It gives perspective to some of the things that you've seen and experienced. And at that time, very few Americans, English-speaking riders had. So, I think that's one thing to keep in perspective, is that 1980 was the first time an English-speaking rider rode the Tour de France, probably. I mean, Phil Anderson or Jock Boyer, one or the other.
So less than a dozen years on from that, yeah. And especially with Americans, I mean, 7-Eleven had been over there for a few years now. It was funny with those guys too, because I did jump in some care messes and stuff, because we were staying in Belgium. And it was almost like the 7-Eleven guys, they didn't want me to do well because they were over there suffering. So they wanted to make sure that I suffered. And I remember guys, those guys being in races with them and then leaving gaps open or making me chase. They're like, we're not letting KS, this isn't going to be easy for him. And so it definitely wasn't. And it was pretty interesting, that whole scenario. And I definitely have more stories from that whole trip. I think I went over there twice in 91. So I actually did some World Cup mountain bike racing over in Berlin, the World Cup. Might have been the finals or one of those. I did some of that as well. So
on that same trip?
I think that was the World Championships trip. So I did make the Worlds that year in 91, based on my finish in Philadelphia. So I think I was fourth in Philly that year, second American. Davis Finney got the jersey. Michelle Zanoli won the race. Phil Anderson was second. Davis was third. I was fourth, second American. Adrie Vanderpool was fifth. So, I mean, not a bad crew of racers to be going against.
That's Vanderpool's dad, by the way.
Yeah. The guy that everyone knows about now. So, so I did do 2 trips over there that year. I mean, I guess we're storytelling now. I did so on that second trip, race the World Championships in Stuttgart in Germany after doing a kind of a national team trip, but it was a pro national team, so it was all of us that made the world. So Lexi was there, Lexi Graywall, James Urbanis. Davis raced the worlds that year, but he was probably over there still maybe racing with 7-Eleven. But there were some of us, we did like this. We did a couple of these short stage races in France. But Len Pettyjohn, who ran the Coors Light team, he was our team director there. And it was interesting because he didn't want me to be there. I think Pettyjohn was still upset that I had won the Jersey the year before, when he had the strongest team in the race and they tactically blew it. And I do remember on that trip him like lobbying against me to get me kicked off the team, to get someone else race. But I had gone through the selection criteria and I had made the selection, raced the Worlds in Stuttgart in 91, had a terrible day. Struggled really bad on that one. Did not make it to the finish, but I ended up staying over in Europe for a while. And as I mentioned, there was a mountain bike World Cup, and it might've been the World Cup finals were in Berlin, and you could basically just kind of sign up and race back then. I mean, there wasn't that much going on. And so, I got a hold of the folks with Yeti, which I still had a good connection with. And I don't remember if they sent me a bike over. They might have sent me a bike to Europe. I think they sent one to their distributor so that I could have a bike to race. And I went over and I raced the World Cup finals up in Berlin. I just rented a car in Munich and was like, I can do it. I'll just rent a car and I'll just drive to Berlin. Excuse me. Thing I didn't realize, because it's paper maps back then, that the majority of my drive was through the former East Germany. And there were no gas stations. I mean, there were no restaurants. I just got in the car and started driving, and I was like, oh, well, I got half a tank. I'll keep driving. I got a quarter tank. It's like, I'm running out of gas and there's nowhere to stop. And I don't remember exactly how it worked out, but I didn't run out of gas, and I finally made it to West Berlin. And, it was the curtain had fallen by then, but like there was no infrastructure there, and I made it up, and I got there and went to registration and found some Americans, and it was a little bit more familiar, seeing all the mountain bike people I'd known. You probably remember Cindy Whitehead, who she raced for the Ross team and Klein. She was out of Santa Barbara. And I remember seeing her, and she was her Tinker Wires was her teammate. I was like, oh yeah, Cindy, man, I made it up here. I was racing. I'm looking for a place to stay. She's like, oh yeah, you can come stay with us. The team got us a hotel room. We have this giant room. I was like, oh sweet. She says, let me check with Tinker. Tinker gave me the thumbs down, so I still had to go find a place. But I mean, it was kind of cool. I rolled up and I see guys like, Daryl Price. It's like, hey, KS, what are you doing here? And you tell them the story. It's like, oh, cool. You went and just raced. We did it. As we said, ride all the bikes, race all the bikes. It was like, that was quite an interesting one. And I got to hang out in Munich for a while. Training wasn't too good, but you do what you can do. So that was quite an experience. Yeah.
Varta, back to your Austrian team. Varta was a battery company, right?
Yeah. So Varta Batteries, VARTA. Yeah. And I mean, I still fairly recently, I feel like I've seen Varta Batteries in some store somewhere. And maybe it was when I was in Europe, and it's been several years, but yeah. So they were a battery company that sponsored at that time, and maybe the only Austrian pro team that raced on the circuit, pro road team. Yeah.
Where I would see Varta batteries growing up was we used to have these really bad bike lights, and they were these sort of rectangle red things, and they would have Varta batteries because, they were French bike lights, and probably they'd source a Austrian battery, and they probably still were made in China back then. But anyway, I remember you'd open it up and there'd be Varta batteries in there, and they weren't no Duracell or Energizer.
No.
Well, they were probably 2 years old at that point, right?
Maybe. But of course they probably work better now. I think they created for obsolescence now.
So
Yeah.
one little quick free lap I need to take is probably Robert Miller was one of the first English-speaking riders to ride the tour or do well in the tour, and Sean Kelly. So, maybe I need to work on my early English speaking. But Phil Anderson, Jock Boyer, Sean Kelly, Robert Miller, those were your early English-speaking riders.
Yeah. Yeah. And we did have Tom Simpson, right?
Yeah.
In the late 60s. But I think as far you're talking about like riders that actually, I mean, unfortunately, Simpson's claim to fame was dying on the Ventoux, but an early pioneer, but definitely like of kind of the, for lack of a better term, the modern era. Definitely Robert Miller, Sean Kelly, Phil Anderson, Jock Boyer. And if we're forgetting someone, then let us know, right? Yeah.
Well, the point is that those guys were early pioneers.
Yes.
And when you were racing the Tour of Swiss, you weren't too far behind them, and that's to be commended and recognized because, Bob Roll was camping when he rode the Tour of Switzerland too. I mean, Americans that were making their way in Europe, it was not easy. So just to be remembered.
Yeah, I mean, I was staying in youth hostels, so, that was quite an upgrade from camping in the rain like Bob did. Yeah, no free laps for me. I think I fairly had that stuff covered from last time.
Yeah, the YouTube, the miners on YouTube have mined the fact that I misspelled Pogacar, so I apologize. That's Mark Twain says he didn't give a damn for a man who could only spell word one way. So I'm going with Mark Twain on that one. So that's my free lap.
Well, it's important to teach the spell check on your devices, right? To have the proper accents and do that stuff too. I have learned that you can teach spell check on your devices. Because my daughter's best friend's name is Bailey, and it's spelled Baylee. And it took me a while to teach my devices to spell that. So, when that thing shows up on the left side with the quotes, click on it a few times and hopefully you'll start to get the Pogacar spelled correctly. And what I also found works, then this might help all of you, is if you look up an article, you can cut and paste it and put it in and it'll have the proper accents and spelling and do that. So, but good one on the free lap.
Yeah, and I'm just going to jump in here sideways with one thing that just binged up on my phone is today the Mo Wilson story premieres on Netflix, and it's hopefully more of a story about who she was as a rider and less of a story of the drama of her murder. But that premieres today, and Bicycling Magazine interviewed her family and, wanted to continue the theme of telling the story of who she was as a person and a little less of the ABC 2020 dramatics that, have been out there in the story. So check that out on Netflix. I'm going to watch that soon.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for letting me know because I knew that was coming out. And she, a little Mo Wilson side story. She was NorCal, rode a lot of the Grasshopper events, which I ride and work at now. And I, that whole tragic story of what happened with her. I did actually get to meet her briefly at the beginning of that year. And the Hopper Series still raises money for the Mariah Wilson's Foundation. So, RIP. And she would have been a player in all this stuff we're doing now with the Lifetime Grand Prix and racing. You look who won Sea Otter that year and who beat Sophia, and it was Mo Wilson. So thanks for that.
Yeah, I often think of her. There's a certain stretch on Elfin Forest where I ride my bike all the time. And I remember when she was getting ready for BWR, which she won in commanding style that day. She was on a Specialized Athos, converted to a gravel bike, lightweight, smart move, to be honest. My friend Brian Coe of Veloworthy was showing her the course from the back of his e-motorcycle. And I was riding, and all of a sudden, I've never really been passed by an e-motorcycle. And all of a sudden, they passed me. And I had just told him, hey, the course is this way. And, you got to, I'd given him some local knowledge of the course. And they passed, and, she was pre-riding the course on the back of his e-motorcycle, which is, something that I'd never seen before. And so every time I ride through there, I think about, her being right there and them waving at me. And so she lives on.
Yes. Yeah. That's a great little memory right there too, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Myself as well. So, and to your point, every time you ride by, right? You
Yeah.
think of that. It's like when you listen to a certain song and it takes you back to a certain point in your life. So awesome.
So we did some riding this last week. You were at the Grasshopper event. Tell us about
Yes.
that.
Yeah, so I was at the King Ridge Hopper, which it was this year, and they did have it again last year. The only kind of paved hopper. It's like 95% pavement, 5% dirt on the long route. Um, and the only hopper that they do a segment style or enduro style event where you time certain stages of it. So two routes, a short course and a long course. I started the long course because it starts a little bit earlier because the long course comes back onto the short course so they can use the segments twice and use the timing twice. And so it was a little colder that morning than the weather was calling for. We started in the little town of Monterrey, which is on the Russian River. It's just, I guess, west or southwest of Guerneville. We're about, I don't know, half a dozen miles from the coast or something. And it was in the very low 40s when we started. And I thought it was going to be a little bit warmer, so it was a little bit chilly. But I ended up rolling out right at the beginning of the long course so that I could ride a good portion of it and make it back and get set up for the announcing stuff. And I rolled out with a full team of juniors. And it reminded me of us when we were kids. And it was great because since it was a segment style event, they just didn't go out like full throttle from the gun like it was a timed race start to finish. Started out with a gradual climb from Monterrey up to Occidental and around, and it was just fun watching the kids ride and doing all that, and then I was with a couple older folks, and I just basically kind of sat at the back of the group and, had my radar on my bike. So I was getting the alerts when the cars were coming up behind us and I could give them a yell and everyone would move over and, cause all the Grasshopper events are on open roads. So I got to do that with them. And then we got to the start of this first segment so early that the timing wasn't set up. And since I didn't care about the timing, I just took off and rode. And then I got caught by, a good chunk of them. I think that first segment was decent. It was like 17 miles. So it wasn't like a 2-mile segment. It had climbing and then descending and rough road and smooth road. Did all that. We descended down to the coast. And then I got to ride up the coast with a few people because I kept going. I didn't want to stop because once this body gets going, it does well if it just keeps going. So we rode up the Sonoma coast, past Highway 116, which comes down from Monterrey to the coast, the Russian River. Then we went up Myers Grade, which is a beast of a climb in and of itself. And we talked a couple episodes ago about that 36 cog on the rear, and I used that quite a bit. But that was fun because by that point, the super fast riders of the elite riders started catching me, and I had some of them blow by me. I'm thinking of the women's winner that day, Flavia Oliveira, came flying by me. Our buddy Pete Stettin, a positive Pete, he came by. Yeah, it's pretty eye-opening when someone who climbs really well comes by you on a climb. And, me, I wasn't really pushing on the climbs. I was just, going, having myself a good ride because I'm fortunate to be able to ride these events as well as work at them. But then segment style, you get to the first aid station and everybody's hanging out. So that was pretty cool. And then at that point, we kind of doubled back on the course a little bit and then took a different cut back to get myself and DJ Domo, Dimitri, who does all the sound and the music for the event. I got to ride back with him, and he grew up in Sonoma County, so that was fun riding back on those roads. So it was a great day. And by the time we got back, it was beautiful and sunny, and just a wonderful day. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Do the pros stop at the aid stations too, or are they?
Yeah, no, they were hanging out, which was pretty cool because it's not right. Like they can get out and do 3 long intervals for the day, And the long route was like, I want to say 93, 94 miles. So it's, it's a good training day for these riders who are training for, whether it's Sea Otter and the Lifetime Grand Prix event or what other events. We've got BWR California coming up a couple weeks after Sea Otter. So the riders are out there doing it. I think some of them, like a guy like Brennan Wirtz, who won his third Huffmaster in a row about a month before that, and did win this King Ridge last year. He said he was coming off a big training week and used it as training, and he still managed to get second overall. But they also go to the aid stations, hang out, talk. They're great aid stations too, and then they can ride with their buddies in between, or make new friends, and then roll that. So that part of it makes it, I would say, a lot more, just more casual when it can be casual. And I mean, I'm sure there's some people that just pinned it the whole time, but the majority of people use that to enjoy the day. And I haven't ridden in beautiful weather like that in a long time. And, I got done and like I had sweat drips all over my top tube of my bike. I was like, wow, it's been kind of a long winter. So that was nice.
So how wide were your tires?
I'm riding they're 30s. They're the WTB exposures, but on my John Jones wheels, they measure out to 32.
Okay.
And I run about, I'm about 190 pounds. I haven't weighed myself in months, but I kind of hover right around there. And I ride to like 50 PSI on the front, 55 in the rear. So it's helpful on those Sonoma County roads because, as they say, the pavement generally is worse than the dirt roads there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Are any of those roads and climbs part of the Levi's Grand Fondo or slightly different?
Some of them have. I mean, King Ridge has been a part of that Fondo, and they even started the foundation that Levi's raises money for was the King Ridge Foundation. So yeah, there's a lot of roads in Sonoma County there, and getting over to the coast that they crisscross and go back and forth. I mean, one year I was driving either a Commissar's or a VIP vehicle in the Tour of California, and we came over, one of those climbs and descended down to the coast. And I still remember, it was a VIP car because I was out in front of the race. And I remember Peter Sagan had broken away, and this motorcycle came up behind me and started laying on the horn because Sagan was hauling ass behind us. So I was like railing this Lexus down Highway 1 with, full support of the Highway Patrol doing that. And I actually had that memory as I was riding north on Highway 1 where we were driving. Like, I remember coming through these corners in a $90,000 car squealing the tires, with one of the greatest bike races of all time in my rearview mirror. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man, fun stuff.
So what's the next event they have coming up?
The next one in the Grasshopper series is the weekend after Sea Otter, and it is up just outside of Fort Bragg, which is Mendocino County. And it's in a little town called Casper, which is the next little kind of hamlet just south of Fort Bragg and north of the little town of Mendocino. And Miguel Crawford, who runs that series, he gets access to some trails in this Jackson Forest, which is kind of this experimental forest. It's a land preserve. And so it is a
membership, right?
Pardon?
Don't you have to have a membership to ride there?
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah. But it's I guess it's a little more mountain bike oriented, but you also can ride your gravel bike. And since I don't own a mountain bike, I'll ride my graveler there, and it's a multi-lap. So I think the short course is 1 lap, and if you're racing the long course, it's 2 laps. The last time they did that, I think it was either 2 or 3 years ago, and it poured rain the whole day. So I'm hoping it's going to be a little bit better, but always really nice to go over to the Mendocino coast. And they're going to do a shakeout ride the day before, and then I think they're going to do another like a social gravel ride the day after. So that should be a fun weekend. I think a lot of people van camp at that one. So hoping for good weather, but I always enjoy going over there. And probably one of my favorite breweries, North Coast Brewing Company, is located in Fort Bragg. I'm a fan of the Belgian style ales, and they do a lot of different variations there. So I may have a beer or two that weekend as well.
Seems
well
like
riding my bike. Yeah.
Seems like I should extend my Sea Otter trip and just stay up there and go to that.
Yeah. Hey, you come to Nevada City and we can go. Yeah. We always have their Humboldt event in July too. So
yeah, the Lost Coast.
Exactly. Well, you did some racing too, huh? Riding, racing.
Yeah, I did the Sagebrush Safari. It's the 7th year that Quick and Dirty has resurrected that event. The first edition was held in 1987. Some debate on who was the first promoter, but I think Ralph Elliott probably did the production way back then. It's out in Campo. It's on some Coral Canyon ORV. I call it off-road vehicle, but what does the H stand for?
OHV.
What does OHV stand for?
Off-highway vehicle. I think it's off-highway vehicle. OHV is off-highway
Coral
vehicle.
Canyon OHV area. Yeah. It's an amazing weekend. It starts on Saturday, but I think Victor starts camping on Wednesday with his crew, so they're getting the event ready, and they put a lot of heart and soul into making an amazing weekend for people. So Saturday they had a 2-lap race around the campground, sort of a fun race. Last year, I think the number plates were white plastic disposable plates. This year we had real numbers, and we did 2 laps around the campground. Yours truly got third in the race. I don't know that more than 6 people were really racing, so more people need to show up because I shouldn't be getting third at 58 years of age. But anyway,
so what?
That
so
was, a nice
was it
warm
like
up.
Tell me, was it like a dirt criterium through the campground, kind of, or what was it? Yeah. So like a short,
it was a big lap.
That sounds
it was
fun.
Super fun.
Yeah.
It reminded me is that I really like racing on the flats.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty good on the flats, and it reminds me of the old days because most of our cross courses and, even Sorrento cyclocross to a little bit and that stuff those other cross races that we did, a lot of flat, like horsepower stuff, our Mora Mesa stuff, our dirt crit, Saturday morning Mora Mesa dirt crit that we did. You could get some momentum rolling, a lot of cross country stuff is like on, off, up, down, and in the old days we would build up some speed, so it was fun to roll fast through the campground, and it was in areas that we didn't race on Sunday with the real race. It was about 31 miles, 4,000 feet. He starts it at 9:30, so people can stay in Alpine and come on over, or drive from San Diego in the morning, or camp. This year the camping wasn't too cold. On Saturday night we watched Supercross, so we all sat outside, about 20 or 30 of us, and we had Supercross on the Starlink. We had a spaghetti dinner with meatballs that didn't roll off down the hill. And Sunday morning's race starts at 9:30, so it's kind of like a casual start, but it's a proper mountain bike race. I had someone say to me that no gravel bike can really work on this. He did try and have a gravel category there a couple of years ago, but no longer. It's a hard race. It rolls out on the road, and there's a road climb up to the first trail, and then it sort of loops like a clover in and out of the 4 corners, including a very substantial climb up Los Pinos, where you probably get to about 4,800 feet, and there's pine trees. So it has it all. It has rock slabs, single track, flowing, a long climb. And I was keyed in on the other big bones riders. When you do triathlons, there's a C on your calf for Clydesdale, and you always can tell. But sometimes you're like, well, where's the other big guys? But I'm pretty good at spotting them. So I had my duels early on with one guy, and then I caught him going into the big climb, and I intentionally, put him in the locker, I thought, but he passed me back when I started to cramp a little bit, but that wasn't probably why he passed me. He just passed me on pure speed on the long climb. and I could see him the whole rest of the ride, not on the downhill. Cooked my back brakes. I'm on the 30-day brake pad subscription program from SRAM.
I like that. That means you're
They
riding.
they auto ship me every 30 days and a fresh set. Just check that auto ship button. Yeah, so my warning tabs were going before the last descent, but nothing was going to stop me. And I got second in the big bones category, which is, gratifying.
Nice.
It was hard. 3 hours and 37 minutes. I consumed 2,400 milligrams of sodium, and I was doing about 65 to 70 carbs per hour. That's mgs. And I was cooked. So I tried to really hydrate, but I was completely out of water across the line, which was semi-intentional. I didn't want to carry extra weight up the Pinos climb. So I, probably a little more carbs to do the whole high carb thing, but it's a great event, highly recommended. And it's a classic mountain bike race, and it deserves more attention and participation. It would be good to see the numbers grow on that event. So
when's the last time you rode that long? Was that BWR Arizona? What'd you say? You were over 3.5 hours, right?
Yeah. And I never trained that long.
Right.
So it shows up. BWR Arizona would have been the last time.
Less time. Well, it's interesting. The body reacts a little different, right? Like you can push in. I mean, I know for like myself, I rode about that long, I think last weekend as well, but like being able to sit in a group, which you're not doing as much on a mountain bike is helpful, right? Like I'm in a road event, I can surf the wheels. Mountain bike events are basically mass start individual time trials for the most part.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I do remember 2 weeks prior, I did do the pre-ride, and we did pre-ride for 4 hours, but we sat at the aid station for half an hour and told stories.
Yeah.
So it was a little different intensity. And also that pre-ride day, I realized I am not consuming enough calories. And I think I need to take a free lap. I might have reported that my kgs were around 4,000 on that pre-ride day. There's no way, because my kgs were like 2,800 this last weekend, which, I was going harder, but it's hard work. And so I did do a 4-hour pre-ride. But in general, I don't train that long. I only ride about 2 hours.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I was just kind of curious about that, right? It's like you can only keep doing that so many times, then you're like, well, I might have to do a couple training rides that are getting to that time, right? Because you can't go by miles. You got to go by time.
Yeah.
Especially. Yeah.
So yeah, that's some riding. And how's life going with your finger?
Well, my kitchen injury, got a Band-Aid on there now, is, and I spared everybody the photos, and I'm still not going to put them up, but I'm kind of blown away how well that's healing, which is good. Maybe I think it's all those years of patching myself up for the road rash, or working around the property injuries, and patching up a little kid have helped. So. Yeah, I'm very, very pleased with how that's going. The life stuff's going good. And speaking of life, we were talking about last weekend. So I was over in the little town of Monterio on the Russian River there. And I would say that, the hopper was great, but really the highlight of my weekend is that my best friend from Santa Barbara Middle School and then high school, Brian Perloff, he lives right there. Like his where he lives is just over a mile from the event venue. And across the street from the event venue, he and his partner, they are opening a restaurant, a pizza restaurant. So I got to hang out with him, stayed there 3 nights. And it got me to thinking, like, we all started riding bikes in middle school. So I was like, and Brian was one of the guys. I mean, back then he did race bikes with us for a few years when we were juniors. Brian and I went to the Olympic Training Center together when we were at Santa Barbara High School. So I was like, what do I have? And I found this photo here I want to share up. So This right here is 1981. This was our bike trip we finished. And, I'm looking at all the people in here. So this is Brian right here with the skewed over Bell. That's not the V1 Pro. That was the Bell Touring. I'm on the other side here in the yellow shirt with the V1 Pro in white. And we're riding up, what is this, Garden Street? Is Garden Street the one that went by?
It's one way up, way up.
Alameda Park. Yeah. So this is us finishing our bike trip, ninth grade. But yeah, so this was the finish there. Joel Newton, who just off of Brian's left shoulder, who actually saw at the Hopper event last year. He came. I mean, I probably hadn't seen him since almost this day. He showed up. Avery Kenyon in the green shirt there. Avery rides bikes to this day and got into racing, which is pretty cool. But I was like, yeah, this is one of the very few photos that I have of myself and BP riding bikes. So I just thought it'd be fun to bring that one up. Yeah, there's the larger version is off to my left there.
Well, let's break it down just a little bit. We have the skid lid invented in San Diego by Richard Bryan, who went on to develop the turbo trainer and early play and aero bars and speed play pedals.
Yeah. So there's a skid lid, right?
Kirkland Bags was the bag company of the moment. Yeah. We always have these bag companies of the moment. We had Kirkland Bag was the bag company of the moment. All three of those are probably Kirkland.
Nothing to do with Costco. It was a bag company, right? You got to remember that. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the tech here, like tennis shoes. I mean, so Joel's got cycling shoes on. I've got cycling shoes there. Peter Christensen back here, cycling shoes, but like a lot of toe clips. But everyone has toe clips except John Monet. He rode the whole thing on his cruiser, which was just, pretty insane.
I think the trip was probably about 300 miles, if I recall. Maybe that's a little long, but we rode from Paso Robles through New Cuyama down to Ojai up to Santa Barbara in 10 days. It's a pretty lengthy ride for that beach cruiser. He had alloy bars there, it looks like.
Yeah.
He's also upgraded the fork.
Yeah. And an insane lever position there too, as I'm looking at that, right? Like those levers, like, can I zoom that? Yeah, look at that. Pretty wild. Handlebar bags, they've been around for a while, people. So if you're wondering where your history came from with handlebar bags on gravel bikes now, there's a bunch of kids in 1981 were using them. Of course, I wanted to race bikes, as did Brian. So we didn't have a handlebar bag, but pretty wild. And that's my Raleigh Grand Sport with Campy Grand Sport Gruppo on there and the custom paint job.
I think I bought that frame from you and then rode it myself.
I kind of think that too. I was going to ask you about that. So it was a gift that kept on giving. Well, that was interesting because I bought that bike from a guy out in Goleta, I remember, just off of the Hollister exit there off of Ward Memorial. There were some condos there. And when I bought the bike from him, he also sold me these Campy flat wrench, this Campy flat wrench set. So it was a 3-wrench set to adjust, to do the bottom bracket, right? So you had the fixed cup tool, you had the pin tool, the pedal wrench. So the 50 mil pedal wrench was the opposite of the fixed cup tool. Then you had the pin tool and one other. And then I think I got the tool to take the dust caps off the Campy pedals. I still have all those tools, by the way. So, I mean, I probably bought that bike in 1980, and I still have those Campy tools. So, we can't, like we say, you don't know where you're going if you don't remember where you came from or who helped influence you. And I mean, I look at all of us kids there, and we were still influenced by somebody else to start doing this. So that's important to remember. Yeah. And I'm glad helmet technology has improved.
Well, my life thing is kind of, I'm going to jam this in the side here, but what are your hacks at your age for recovery? Like, what do you do to recover as you age in cycling?
So for cycling specifically, I have made a habit of taken some type of recovery drink when I get done with a ride that's probably over 3 hours or more, and I'm hoping to throw more of those in my life. Um,
Are they
my
high in protein, or what? Do you want to drop any brand names or
I
like?
I'm a big fan of First Endurance. They're out of Salt Lake City, out of there, Utah, and they have a recovery drink called Ultragen. I really enjoy their recovery drink. And my recovery hack on the recovery drink is I mix the Ultragen with a little bit of coconut water, and then coconut water is the liquid, but then I put like 1/4 almond milk in it as well. So I get a little bit of calories, changes the flavor up. It's like I drink that down so fast. Sometimes I make a second one, and that helps. I think probably the biggest recovery thing for myself is if I'm tired the next day, I don't try to like push through and I would like, oh, I'm too tired to ride. I'll work in the yard for 90 minutes and 4 hours later I'm still out there. I've kind of backed off that and pushed that stuff down the road. And it helps. I mean, that, and then I think the big thing for me also recovering from cycling is doing other types of physical activity, gym work, whether it's like group classes or weightlifting. That also helps just for my body to not hurt as much. So I always feel that I eat pretty well. I cook most all my meals for myself and Robin, so that's helpful, staying away from restaurant food and processed food. What about you?
Well, I mostly wanted to ask the question of others because I think it's a good question to ask other, athletes that are your age. For me, more protein in my diet, more protein for recovery. Believe it or not, sometimes espresso for recovery, and then sometimes before I stretch in the morning. There was a period of time where I felt like I had insatiable appetite that was like after, like I would only ride an hour and a half or something, and then you would overeat to try and recover. Like you're like tired, so you're like looking to food to help stimulate the recovery. I think sometimes coffee can be a hack in that moment, in addition to recovery drinks. So more protein. My Whoop, paying great attention to my Whoop and my Whoop score and listening to my body. Um, and then harder on my hard days and a lot more easier days and fewer hard days is
Yeah.
kind of where I'm progressing to. But it's really important for me to listen to my body.
Yeah. Listen to it and then act on it. Yeah, it's interesting. I remember a quote from Greg LeMond, back when we were just starting up, probably late 80s, early 90s. And he was interviewed on, with something about, well, what's the biggest thing about training, or what the context was, but it was that most people they don't go hard enough on their hard days and they don't go easy enough on their easy days. Right. But the big thing is really, I think to your point, like going easy on your easy days and knowing that recovery is part of the program, right? Like you can go, I'm going to go do this ride and it's got these climbs, or, maybe you're going to go do some intervals, or you're going to do whatever you're going to do, but you have to know that recovery is part of that program. Recovery isn't like, some people, their mentality is, oh, if I'm not, I'm not being active, I'm being weak or this or that. But it's like, I think maybe that's one good thing that comes with age is that wisdom, and then actually being able to listen to it, to take it easy, because that is super important. Then
I think
you can fight better the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we're forced to slow down because we just feel it hits us hard,
Yeah.
and so the signals are a little more obvious and harder to ignore. But it's a challenging thing. And then also, I'll always have the mindset of, oh, I'm trying to relive my youth. I'm trying to get my climbing back. I'm trying to, prove this, prove that. And if you just can put that aside and listen to your body, you will have some moments of brilliance, but
Yeah. Yeah. And our bodies, I always tell people, our bodies are really great at telling us what we need. and they're also really great at doing what we want them to do when we give them the proper tools. And I think those proper tools really, right? Diet and right, exercise, but then and rest. Rest is part of exercise. So yeah, it's not that difficult. People have been surviving for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
And some haven't, and some have. So yeah, listen to your body, people.
So we've had some good racing, and
Yes.
we're about to have some good racing this weekend and the weekend after.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess what should be maybe just the World Championships, although it's not fair. But the Tour of Flanders, the Ronde van Vlaanderen, is this Sunday. We're recording on a Friday, so yeah, the proper the second monument of the year. But as we say, the hard used to be called the hard man racing, but the hard woman racing is coming up, the Cobbled Classics. So we've had some great warm-up races, lead-in races coming into that. We did talk about Milan-San Remo last pod, but yeah, the Cobbled Classics are coming up. So, it's been interesting for me. I guess the bright side for me is that Wout van Aert continues to be improving and showing, signs of what has made him who he is. Mads Pedersen seems to be improving. We didn't even know if he was going to be racing. Still waiting for that big result for him in the spring classics, the Northern Classics. Van der Poel seems that he's recovered, from his crash in Milan-San Remo, and his hand injury doesn't seem to be so bad. Everyone's talking about the Pogacar. But the cool thing about these races is they tend to come down to that mano a mano, rider against rider. It's not like someone's going to have, well, we'll see on Sunday, but that, maybe the team efforts happen a little bit earlier, but, it seems like with these races, the riders kind of go head to head a little bit earlier. And it's a bit more cerebral racing. And experience really plays in. I think these riders, the Belgian, the Dutch riders that grew up racing this stuff and riding these roads, they have an advantage just because they've ridden these roads so much. They can, they can tell by how the clouds are, how the wind is, what it's going to be like. They know what's around this corner because they've ridden it so many times. That balanced out with the science of it and the recon, it should just be amazing. And then I would say on the women's side, seeing Lorena Wiebes climbing so well on the bergs up north, it's like if she can get over these climbs, it's game over for all the other riders. Yeah, but fun to see. Marlene Reusser, world time trial champion, coming on, beating Demi Vollering in a sprint. Forcing Vollering to lead it out. And I'm blanking right now. I apologize on the Jumbo rider that came up and caught them, but yeah, it looks to be hopefully a lot less predictable than people are thinking. And there's just so many things that can happen in a 1 day, 150, 160 mile race. So we've seen some of the pre-event footage of the greasy cobbles and riders not getting up, but no one's going to put up footage of riders just riding up these climbs because then they wouldn't get the clicks on it. So we'll see what it's actually like once race day comes around.
Yeah, the clips look drier today than yesterday's clips. I think tomorrow is the Grand Fondo, so my friend Sommer is going to ride it. I told him to tag us on the service course report so I could reshare his clips. I don't know if he'll get my message in time, but I think they're going to be drier conditions. They had a lot of humidity and that's slippery, and there was a truck accident. It was extra mud on the Koppenberg there. I feel like it's going to be dry, or not the slip and slide. I always enjoy the slip and slide. It's good entertainment, but we'll see. The one other thing I noticed about the clips is that Remco just, for growing up in Belgium, he doesn't look as good on the cobbles as I would hope. And maybe on race day, I'll change my opinion, but you would think that I know he played soccer as a kid, but he just doesn't look Belgian on the cobbles.
He doesn't. Well, I think DS spoke about that. I know he did speak about that on a previous pod, that he just doesn't seem to have that souplesse, that that ability to just kind of adjust his weight and the pressure on the pedals, and or maybe it's not that he doesn't possess it, but it doesn't come to him naturally. It's like it's a forced or something that he needs to learn, that maybe, not growing up racing bikes, he just didn't learn that feel and how to make those the weight adjustments, shifting your weight around on the bike, your pressure on the bars versus on the saddle versus on the pedals. When the rear end starts going a little bit, you back off the power just slightly, to get traction. Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're looking at clips. I mean, when the racing happens, but yeah, there's definitely something to that, I believe, to the riders that grew up on it versus the riders that didn't. I mean, you can still be the rider of a generation in Tadej Pogačar, but he didn't grow up on that. I think his just natural ability, his hunger and love of racing counts for a lot, but it's going to be super interesting to watch, both on the men's and the women's side. The women's racing has become a lot more dynamic. It seems as the riders are willing to take bigger chances, going for the breakaways. So it's going to be fun all around.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're going to see some early breaks trying to get away from the Tade show. I know he'll go early, but I think somebody's going to try and go even earlier than him. The other thing that happened this last week is that Remco, announced that he was riding, but he pre-wrote it and reconned it back in December and recorded it with a film crew before he was even allowed to wear the Red Bull jersey. So he was all dressed in black out pre-riding it and making a feature video about getting ready to ride it. And then, when he was asked point blank by media journalists whether he would ride Flanders, and Red Bull's media coordinators asked point blank, they all denied it, said no, he's not, including last week, including middle of the week, they said no. But they had the video ready, and he was obviously going to ride and probably intended to ride all along. But, part of me is like, well, he was waiting to see how the weather was going to be, or, just playing his cards. But it caused quite a stink because the journalists felt like they were lied to. And then, Red Bull controlled the media and rolled out this YouTube video with him pre-riding it. And, and in those December recordings, he's talking as if he's getting ready to ride it, like back in December, he knew he was going to. So it was an interesting debate in the media. I think we'll hear a little bit more about that. If you want to read up on that, you can read Cycling News has some articles about it. And then the journalist who was so upset because he felt lied to is Daniel Benson, who has quite a following on Substack. I recommend reading him as well. And his thing is Evenepoel in Flanders, a gift wrapped poorly. So
yeah, I mean, fair enough. You feel a little bit burned, but just because things were a certain way doesn't mean they're going to continue that way. And especially we've learned that in the media landscape across, all different subjects. So, yeah.
Well, it's important to focus on the media because these athletes have more following sometimes than the journalist or the media itself. Evenepoel has a lot of subscribers on YouTube, and he is, in a way, his own media. And so the landscape has changed.
It has. I mean, and the riders that have those resources, they can control their narrative a little bit more. But the cool thing about bike racing is once the gun goes off and they start racing, it's bike racing, right? You plan for all these things that you can control, right? You can control which wheels you're riding, what tires you're riding, the gearing you have, your equipment, right? You can control your nutrition, you eat that. But man, that's what I love bike racing. Once the gun goes, all that kind of goes out the window. Like that prep's done, but you never know, right? Are you going to run over something and get a flat tire at an inopportune time? Is there going to be an overlap on a wheel? Is the weather going to change? You never know. And it's just, right? Are you going to drop your bottle, this nutrition that you need at a crucial time, and you can't get another one? Like there's so many variables. That's what just makes it so exciting to watch is the variables. Like if you plan for 100 things, the 101st thing's going to happen, right? The thing that you hadn't planned for, and that's what's fun. So we shall see.
Yeah, but I think the media game is a little part of it now.
Oh yeah.
You used to play parking lot mental games with people, or, side eye, or not talk to people, or, psych people out with your fancy race van when it would pull up or whatever. But now there's the media game, the social media game, and we've seen it play out a little bit recently in the gravel world where, there's people snickering about things afterwards or podcasting. The media complaining about the side-by-side media coverage at Mid-South, the stoppage of the train, all that's part of the game now.
It is. It is part of the game. But I still love the fact that you still got to get on your bike and you got to pedal and you got to stay upright. You got to keep air in your tires, keep your chain on, and make it to the finish line. So yeah. And some people I think fall into that more than others. Right. It's you get sucked in. And it's funny. I did see a couple clips of Remco and it's like, he's off his bike and he's instantly on his phone tapping away. I was like, wow, it seems like he should just be out training. I mean, I don't know what he's looking at, so I don't really know, but it's like, I mean, maybe that's part of it.
As we slide into Blinded by Science, I think there's a great example of a rider who handled a media situation real well, and that's Filippo Ganna and his handlebars. And, also, just I want to slide in there, he motor paced back up, and he won that race at the end. And there hasn't been a lot of negative take about, he had two mechanicals, his front wheel imploded, and he broke his handlebar. And there was some sticky bottle to get him back. And you can say that the way he won that sprint, his sticky bottle recovery might have played a little bit of a role, but his good quotes about my girlfriend made me a nice Easter dinner, and I don't know, like, he played the media well. I think you want to comment on the handlebar thing. I think Pinarello tried their best to handle that. I think he's doing a good job playing the media here.
Playing it there, yeah. I wasn't aware of the pacing of the sticky bottles, but ultimately that, is unfortunately up to the officials to make that call. And it seems like there's a camera on every top rider these days, and especially a guy like that, right? When that happens, because we do have a little footage. I mean, you were talking about his handlebar, right? Like we've spoken about carbon cockpits, like why we don't ride them.
I ride them, but you don't.
Yeah. But I mean, we've seen this before.
The heaviest guy in the group rides them.
Not me, man. No carbon on the handlebars or the stem, especially off-road. Yeah, but so we did have Dwars Vlaanderen. Ganna broke his handlebar, which was the big one. Fortunately, he didn't. It was a catastrophic failure, but it didn't break when he was in the drops, right? So I've got a little like kind of a still of what it looked like here with his handlebars. So it broke right below. You can see here he's pushing on the top of his lever, and it broke just below the clamp, right? So just below where the lever clamps to the handlebar. And if we think back, and it was I got the notes here. In 2021, a very similar thing happened with Mathieu van der Poel. And that was on a Canyon handlebar, proprietary handlebar for their bike. This is a proprietary Pinarello handlebar. And I did a little research on this one, and Pinarello spoke to Cycling News, and they said, spokesperson for Pinarello explained that the failure would not be related to a manufacturing defect, but rather a fitting error. According to their details, an excessive tightening of the brake clamp would have caused damage to the handlebar structure in the clamping area. So that doesn't mean it did, but it's just, to me, that explanation is just pushing it away, like, oh, it's not us. And I remember a similar thing with that situation with Vanderpool and Canyon in 2021, where I believe that handlebar had like a hexagonal shape or a square shape to it, and you're supposed to use a specific clamp for the brake lever. Regardless, the frickin' handlebar broke, right? Like, these are riders that are putting their lives on the line doing this, and the handlebar broke. Super fortunate that Ghana didn't get hurt, or he went down in the group and took down a bunch of riders because the handlebar failed. I've got this one, right? So this is actually a little video. So that's it. His handlebar. Like, if you look at that, right? Look when he pushes it. Oh. Super fortunate.
The Vanderpool Canyon one was canyon bars are adjustable widthwise, and so it failed. It inserted in, and then it was a Trex tightening. It failed. He pulled it out. It didn't break.
No, I thought it failed at the brake lever. Now you're going to make me look this up while we keep talking. But the one I'm thinking of is the handlebar actually broke because he kept riding, and the handlebar tape I remember was dangling off. And I didn't know I needed to bring this one up, but I'll keep searching.
Well, those are Canyon. They're adjustable width bars.
Yeah, right.
And they have 4 bolts underneath on the underside for tightening.
Right. Let's see here. 10 mechanical fails. Winning with... come on. Yeah, this was 2021. Let's see. This is a 3.5-minute video, so I can't bring it up, but... if I find the spot, I'll share it.
Yeah.
Oh wait, here we go. Let's see here. Let me. Nowadays there's so many pop-ups. I don't even know how to get rid of some of this stuff. Full screen. Oh, it's someone talking about it. Piece of handlebar. I don't know that I can do that. So this is just a bunch of stills and some guy talking about it. Let me see this. Okay. I'm going to bring up this video, but I'm going to pause it. So, where's our share button? So this to me, this is the one I'm thinking of. It looks to me like it broke, right? I guess it broke right above the lever, huh? So Ghana's was broken below the lever. If you're looking there, right?
Yeah, you're right. It isn't the width part.
It's not the width part, though. It was, I believe it was, and again, Canyon said, as Pinarello says, it had to do with the clamp. Ultimately, these are the best riders in the world on finely tuned race machines. And, DS wrote in the notes, unfortunately he's not with us, but it's like, if a World Tour mechanic working on Filippo Ganna's bike or Mathieu Vanderpool's bike can't get the torque specification right, how does someone who buys one of these bikes, and hasn't worked on it at the bike shop or they work on it, get that correct? I think it's just, the bigger thing is here is you got to be careful. Torque specifications exist for a reason. Yeah, I'm not
privy to layup too. The layup in the factory, there can be just a blem or an error, or the layup person had to go to the bathroom and forgot where they were in their layup process and then came back, and then there's an air bubble. And I mean, layup is such it's almost like they're sewing when they're laying this carbon.
Yeah.
So the errors can be made. I don't know quite how the companies test, and I shouldn't really speak to this, but I would love to tour a factory in Taiwan and see how they QA and test, stress test. I don't care how I'm not talking about the design phase. I want to know how they stress test every bar that's going out the door. or every rim or every frame. It's not a perfect. It's not. There's still human error that can be made in layup.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the only experience I have in that was when I worked for Time and going to the carbon fiber factory where Time made their bikes. And it was forks back then. We were big in the fork business in the late 90s and early 2000s. And it was a different process. They used a process called RTM. RTM is an acronym for resin transfer molding, where they would actually weave the shapes into the carbon and then inject the epoxy in, versus most all the common carbon now is pre-preg, where the carbon, there's pieces of carbon fiber or sheets, layers, that is carbon fiber, and if I'm remembering this correctly, the epoxy is injected in, and so you get sheets of carbon, and that's what you're talking about with layup, and then they lay layer upon layer upon layer. More, if you're talking about a bicycle, there's more around the bottom bracket than there is, say, in the center of the top tube, right? Because the stresses are different. So a different process. But I agree with you. Like, how do you know? You spoke episodes ago about, a brand that's like, they've got some X-ray technology, but yeah, I was like,
ultrasound. Yeah, ultrasound that you would put inside.
Yeah.
I was talking to my preferred mechanic, Adam, at Cadence, and he's like, well, you tap it with a coin and listen to the sound. I'm like, yeah. How is that like precision when your life is at stake? But, and it's crazy, you crash or your bike falls over at a coffee shop and you didn't even know it fell over. The person picks it up. You didn't know your bike just fell over, and, like the handlebar tape might be fine, but you made a blem at that point, or
yeah. That is the scary part. And I spoke about it before. I had a carbon handlebar fail, and I never crashed on that handlebar. I know that, and it did fail, but that doesn't mean my bike didn't fall over. Probably did, and I didn't even think about it, and that could have made that weak spot. Well, I'm just happy nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting though. The brands, so, they still blame it on somebody else. It wasn't us. It was the mechanic. It was a fitting error. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the days when they just take responsibility, and that's it.
So I will look for the feedback from our listeners. We reviewed electronic pumps, episode 3 or 4 in Carpinteria when we were all together.
That's right.
And I thought it would be nice to have just a little bit of follow-up, and maybe our listeners enjoy when we review a product. And so give us the feedback, thumbs up, like you want us to review, and then follow-up review. I've been using, this Silca Electrico with the gauge. There's 2 models, one with the gauge, one without. And I just wanted to give you a 6-month update on it. It's great on road tires for accuracy. On a mountain bike tire, when you're trying to get lower PSIs, it clicks off, and then you have to wiggle it, and after you wiggle it, it goes down for PSI, and then you pump it a little bit more and you wiggle it, and it goes down 3 PSI, and then you wiggle it. It's just quite a lot of work to get accurate PSI. It's nice when you're feeling lazy, and I do have the one without the gauge in my mountain bike, as it's lighter than CO2. And so I'm focused on weight. I am taking a risk.
Important for the big guy.
Yeah. I'm taking a risk that this is my CO2 now. I don't carry any CO2. So I have the one without a gauge, and it's probably going to pump 8 to 10 mountain bike tires. But anyway, that's a little follow-up review on a product that I've been using. And then I have a few more that I will give initial reviews on as we move through future episodes. But let us know if you want us to give us our feedback, or if you want to hear what we have to say on products that we're using.
Well, and I have the Presta cycle version, the Prestaflator Pro, and I, as people say, don't ever say it, but I've been very fortunate. Like, I haven't had to use it because I haven't had any flat tires. But I did come across a friend of mine and his buddy out riding a month and a half ago. on one of our trails, ditches around here, the irrigation ditches, and he had sliced his tire and gone through his CO2 and couldn't get it to seal. And he had no plugs. So I plugged the tire for him, but he didn't have any more CO2s. And I had my press deflator and I was able to air his tire up enough that he could get back down to town and get done and use the battery up. So I think it's a great piece to have. And anytime we can put less stuff in the landfill with empty quick fill containers or even in recycling, the better. I still ride with that thing every day. It goes in and every once in a while, like before the hopper this past weekend, I threw it on the charger and it still had a full charge because I hadn't been using it. But it's a nice little thing to have, as much for yourself as when you can help somebody else out. And
do you find it's accurate on its PSI, or do you have the same problem I do where either the sealant or the valve is clicking off at the wrong PSI?
I haven't had that issue at all. I have noticed that it reads about 2 PSI different than other gauges that I have. So like I've got a press deflator attachment with a digital gauge for my compressor. I have that little pump, pocket pump. I have a Crank Brothers floor pump that has a digital gauge. And then I also have a digital gauge that I keep in my bag when I travel, Toe Peak. And they're all of them, but the press deflator are all pretty darn accurate as far as PSI goes. And I find that the press deflator is off about 2 PSI, but it's just the reading. So I just adjust for that. So it's consistent. I'm making the assumption, since the other 3 read pretty close to each other, that it is the press deflator that's off just a little bit. And I don't know if there's a way to adjust that. I have used it so little that I haven't really bothered. I think it's like if I'm airing up because I get a flat, and I can get the plug to work, I'm happy to get home and deal with it when I get home. So, since I don't race, I ride. So it's not such a big deal. And the biggest thing is getting home and not having to phone anybody, because that never goes over well if you got phone service. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think our last segment for today will probably be the amateur. And I think yes. I'm the one with the amateur. For me, it's current pros. You're not being professional all the time. So
road pros, mountain bike pros, gravel pros, who are you talking about? All pros?
I'm going to go with gravel pros on this one, the privateers. So when you guys are using the label gravel dads, you are bad-mouthing your principal consumer and the one who is funding your frame sponsorship and your components. And the use of the gravel dads in your regular day-to-day marketing or podcasting, I think, is heavily amateur. The concept of gravel dads is the overzealous male, 45 to 50, 60, who, is paying full entry fee and buying a full price bike, and a little overzealous in the comment section of Instagram, or talking to privateers at the expo. Certain meme accounts have sort of pushed that dialogue out there. I don't think it's a good look. And I also think not knowing the history of pro cycling and the pioneers that came before is also part of that, not really a good look. Like, I think they should all probably follow the Instagram account Clips and Straps and learn about the history of American cycling, because when they can barely remember the Armstrong years and they make all kinds of sort of errors about the history of American cycling and who can ride the worlds and who makes the Olympic team, and it just sort of seems a little short-sighted, as if the privateer world is the only world and that cycling isn't a great collective, and that you should be respecting the history. Great athletes have done that. Kobe Bryant, respected and studied Michael Jordan until he was blue in the face. So I'm not saying that they all have to do the Kobe Bryant style, but I just think it's very amateur when you're starting to badmouth your main segment that's supporting you, and they're moving into complaining about the media and how they're recovering the safety issues. I understand, but you got to respect the media. You got to respect the consumer base that's supporting you, and that's being a professional.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Yeah. If you don't know where you came from, how can you know where you're going? I like to say that, right? We want to ride all the bikes and understand that you weren't the first and you won't be the last. And I think especially, when you specified gravel, like gravel is this gravel segment that's come about the last dozen years or so. It's a combination of road and mountain bike, right? It's a amalgamation of the two. And yes, it's its own discipline, but at the same day, right? Chain, pedals, crank, right? Wheels, handlebars. We're still riding bikes, and I think it's important. So that's a great one to end on.
All right. So that's episode 21 or 24.
24. Holy moly. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We welcome your feedback, comments. Let us know if you want us to review any products. And we'll see you at Sea Otter. We hope to record one more before then.
We should. All right.
See ya.